For the past few weeks, there's been one question that's been coming up to my mind a lot. Is the Inflation Reduction Act bad for Aptera? Well, as you know, the US government passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and in the act is a portion that gives EV manufacturers in the US up to $7,500 for each EV they produce. Now, some of you might be thinking, how could a $7,500 EV credit be bad for Aptera? Well, since Aptera is a three-wheeled vehicle, it is excluded from receiving the $7,500 credit, leaving the EV manufacturer at a significant disadvantage when compared to the other OEMs. Now, Aptera has said that they're going to lobby to see if they could carve out an exemption for their vehicle. But I gotta be honest, that doesn't quite sit well with me. Because to me, in my mind, having Aptera spend their precious time and resources lobbying the government to include them in the EV credit is a worrisome proposition.
Unfortunately, the company got really leveraged to a DOE loan to the tune of $600 million or so dollars. And that loan just didn't happen. After 2009, the loans got really restricted and the economy wasn't doing so well. So, unfortunately, a lot of great people that came up with a lot of great innovation early on at Aptera had to part ways. And the company really just sat for a decade. And then Steve and I were lucky enough to be able to jump back into it about a year and a half ago. And we've been working way too many hours ever since trying to get this beauty right here done. So we can then have a path to production here in just a year.
You see, it's hard for me not to be reminded of what happened to Aptera in the previous iteration. The CEOs of Aptera have admitted that the company spent way too much energy, too much time previously trying to get qualified for the Department of Energy Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Program, trying to get approved for that. And so watching this new development with the $7,500, although the program is different, it just kind of bothers me, or I'm a little bit worried that we might be looking at a repeat. Again, this new $7,500 credit is very different. You see, this credit applies to all EV manufacturers. So not just EV manufacturers, but also manufacturers of plug-in hybrids. So basically, any US-based competition will be getting this $7,500 credit so long as their vehicles cost more or less than $80,000. And Aptera will be one of the few manufacturers that will be left out. Think about it this way. With this credit, a $35,000 Chevy Bolt turns into a $27,000 Chevy Bolt. Or a $30,000 Ford Escape Hybrid becomes a $23,000 car. You see, there are two issues I have with the EV tax credit portion of this bill. The first issue is that Aptera, being the first affordable solar EV manufactured in the US, does not qualify for a bill designed to encourage local manufacturing, innovation, and mass adoption of EVs. Let me say it again. The only US-made affordable and solar-powered EV is not eligible under the current version of the $7,500 EV tax credit. The second issue I have with this bill is that although hybrids are far more efficient than their gas-only counterparts, they qualify for this EV tax credit, whereas 100% BEV Aptera does not. I mean, think about it. Cars that are getting less than 60 miles per gallon equivalent will be eligible for the $7,500 credit, while Aptera, which gets over 300 miles per gallon equivalent, gets $0 in credit. Let's take a look at some of the key specs between the vehicles which qualify for the $7,500 credit and see how they stack up compared to Aptera. So for these examples, I'm going to be using the 40 kilowatt hour version of the Aptera. The reason why I've chosen this one is because it's going to be the first version of Aptera to be manufactured in larger quantities. Of course, there are different battery capacities and configurations, but I'm going to focus primarily on the 40 kilowatt hour version. So let's start off by comparing Aptera to some of the hybrids. So let's just start by looking at the battery capacities between Aptera and some of these hybrids. Now, the hybrids that we're comparing here range somewhere between 12 kilowatt hours and up to 24 kilowatt hours as far as the battery size. They are about half to a third of what Aptera battery size is, The 40 kilowatt hour Aptera has a 400 mile range. And if you compare that to the highest range hybrid, that would be at this point the Volvo S60 hybrid, which gets 41 miles of range out of its batteries. And in this case, the Volvo S60 has almost a 19 kilowatt hour battery. So we're looking at about half. The Volvo S60 has about half the battery capacity of Aptera, and it gets 41 miles, whereas Aptera has double the battery size at 40 kilowatt hours. However, it goes for 400 miles. So at twice the battery capacity, Aptera can go 10 times as far as the Volvo S60. So if you're looking at how many miles per gallon equivalent that you would get, the Aptera is coming in at 330 miles per gallon equivalent, whereas the closest to it would be the Ford Escape hybrid, which gets about 105 miles per gallon. Again, we're looking at a 40 kilowatt hour Aptera versus a 15 kilowatt hour Ford Escape. So the Ford Escape has about about a third of Aptera's battery capacity. Again, on this metric, Aptera beats the next closest competitor by several multiples. So we're looking at 105 miles per gallon equivalent versus 330 miles per gallon equivalent. So that's 3 times more the efficiency of the Ford Escape. And this is due primarily to Aptera's design. Aptera has been designed to be extremely aerodynamic so that there's the least amount of resistance possible. So essentially, Aptera is only burning about 0.1 kilowatt hours per mile, whereas the next best hybrid, the Ford Escape, is burning about 0.39. So that's about 4 times more kilowatt hours per mile driven. So if the goal of this bill is to increase EV adoption, increase EV manufacturing, and of course, considering that, batteries are going to be at a premium, you would want to reward the cars that are being the most frugal, the most energy efficient when it comes to utilization of batteries, the utilization of energy. And it's clear looking at this graph that Aptera does a much, much, much better job than any hybrid currently available on the market when it comes to energy usage. They're using far less energy than even the next best hybrid. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, that's not really fair to compare Aptera to plug-in hybrids. So the more fair comparison would be to compare Aptera to other BEVs, to other battery electric vehicles. And so let's take a look at that. Let's see how Aptera stacks up compared to other BEVs. We're looking at battery capacities ranging from 40 kilowatt hours, which would be the Aptera, up to 118 kilowatt hours with the Lucid Air Dream edition. So again, let's look at the same two specs. Range on a 40 kilowatt hour battery, you're able to get 400 miles out of the Aptera, whereas the next closest one would be the Tesla Model S and the Lucid Dream. And those two have their battery size is well over, for the Tesla Model S, it's at 100 kilowatt hours. And for the Dream, it's at 118 kilowatt hours. So we're looking at about 2.5 to 3 times the battery capacity for those cars that are getting 400 mile ranges, whereas Aptera's getting that with a 40 kilowatt hour battery. So again, far more efficient than even these EVs. And if you're looking at the miles per gallon equivalent between Aptera versus other BEVs, again, it's very clear here. Aptera coming in at 330 miles per gallon equivalent. The next closest EV to this would be the Tesla Model 3, which gets 132 miles per gallon equivalent. So, and this is an average between city and highway driving. So again, we're looking at about a 2.5 times increase for the Aptera, even versus the most efficient car currently available, which is the Tesla Model 3. Aptera beats it by quite a bit. Again, 330 miles per gallon versus the 132 miles per gallon that the Model 3 is getting. And similarly, if we look at the energy consumption of these different cars, you can see that's the reason why is because of Aptera's unique design. Aptera again getting or using about 0.1 kilowatt hours per mile driven. The next closest car to that would be the Model Y at 0.2 kilowatt hours driven. 0.2 kilowatt hours per mile driven. And so even with the EVs, Aptera uses half the energy as the next closest competition, which would be the Tesla Model 3. So I'm not even going into the pricing, when you compare the Aptera prices versus these other EVs, because Aptera is already significantly priced below those other EVs. So we're just looking at I'm just looking at it from the perspective of if the goal of the bill is to promote EVs, EV manufacturing in the US, battery manufacturing in the US, and so forth, it's clear to me that Aptera should be part of that mix. This is a car that uses far less energy than any of the hybrids by a long shot, and even outperforms the best EVs currently on the market. I'm not sure what the current state of Aptera's lobbying efforts are with the U.S. government. We haven't really gotten an update to see where that stands, and we probably won't hear anything until there's some type of resolution, until there's a more definitive answer as far as what's happening there. But at the moment, Aptera is out of the $7,500 EV credit. And I think it's important that we do what we can to help them with this. I'm not sure. I hope you guys have some ideas, whether it be maybe a change.org petition or something else. Maybe some of you guys can come up with some ideas of what we can do to help Aptera to get qualified for the $7,500 EV credit. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys or what could be done. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to your input on this one for sure. Next week, I'm going to be at the Fully Charged Live North America show out in San Diego. I'm flying out all the way from Florida, all the way to California, just to go see the Gamma. Hope you guys will come out there too. Hopefully I'll meet one or two of you, and we'll have a great time taking a look at the Gamma and of course some of the other EVs out there. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.